So we have now concluded the module on portfolio management, which has driven through tools and principles to analyze categories and identify improvement to identify action to improve spend management. We have talked a lot about the need for each category to shape a suitable supply base. Now, in this module, we are going to deep dive a little more about how to design a supply base for a specific category through the process of supplier relationship management. In particular, we will deep dive into some tool, into some principle, into some example to create a suitable supply management for a specific category. Of course, this complements what we have seen until now. Basically, in the portfolio management process, what we saw was an already given supply base that we have analyzed through order for each category with action for improvement. We have discussed that revision of the supply base, analyze of the nature of the supplier in order to establish partnership, establish some optimization and rationalization technique are at the center of action for improvement, but now we will see more in a structured way how it is possible to arrive to a specific supply base for a category. This is made through a process which is called supply-based management or supplier relationship management that I will consequently analyze in this module, and in particular the first one that we will see is supplier qualification. So, in order to create a supply base for a specific category, you need to be able to assess the supply base capability in order to identify the best suitable supplier to be activated to satisfy your need. In particular, the first step of the supplier relationship management is supply market analysis. Supply market analysis is that action that buyer and category management perform in order to analyze the characteristic of the supply market and identify among the infinite number of suppliers which are the potential partners to be addressed. Once I know which are the potential partners that need to be addressed in the whole supply market, the first logical step that I can make is to create a potential supply base. So I analyze the market through a structured market research, and I create a potential supply base. The potential supply base includes all the potential suppliers that I consider suitable to satisfy my need. Among the different and potential suppliers that can be suitable for my need, not everyone meet which are my basic requirements. The ones that meet my basic requirements are those that are called suppliers which are qualified. So from the supply base, so the subset of suppliers that are potentially interesting for me, I need to identify the ones that are suitable and respect some qualifying criteria, and this is made through the qualification process. So among the potential suppliers, only a subset really satisfied the basic requirements for being part of my company supply base. So I have 1 million potential interesting, but only a subset of them really qualify for being my supplier and to satisfy my requirement. So I need to put in place a qualification process. A qualification process realizes what is called the actual supply base. So from potential supplier, I step to actual supplier, which can be potentially activated whenever I have a need arising. So potential are those that potentially are able to satisfy my need. The actual supplier are instead those that meet my basic qualification criteria. Once I have a base of potential actual supplier to be activated, every time I have a need, of course, among the potential actual supply base, I need to select the ones that are able to satisfy the specific requirements of the request. So basically, The suppliers which are qualified are able in general to meet my qualification criteria. Selection process and selected supplier are those that are more suitable to satisfy a specific need. So according to specific need and condition in a certain moment of the year, some of the suitable supplier can be selected and activated for a specific supply. I can have supplier for a specific laminating machine, but in one time of the year I have my production of television that needs a laminating machine. I would select on the supplier including my actual supply base only the one that are suitable to satisfy the supply of a laminating machine for my television product. Okay? At this point, I select some supplier. The selected supplier are the ones that are activated. So from potential, so the one potentially interesting, I step toward the actual. So the all supplier that potentially are able to satisfy my need in light of respecting my qualifying criteria. From the actual supply base, I step through selection through the active supply base. So those suppliers have been selected and awarded a contract. Once a supplier is being awarded a contract, of course I need to evaluate its performance, and in evaluating its performance through the ongoing evaluation, I put in place what is called control. So the active supplier have a contract, they are subjected to an ongoing evaluation, and this is an activity that from a purchasing perspective means performing control on the supply base. And then of course this process is circular and it can be repeated. So for the purpose of this course we will analyze all these three steps. So we will see some principle about qualification, some principle about selection, and some principle about ongoing evaluation, but we won't see anything about supply market analysis. Why? Because it's an extensive topic. It just needs a course just to deal with supply market analysis, and because this is probably something that you may have seen already in some other courses, like in marketing courses, for example. So for sake of simplicity, the first step, how to analyze and tools for analyze the supply market, are excluded, because it's not like a typical purchasing tool. So supply market analysis is present also again in marketing research, market analysis, customer market analysis. So as it is more value see stuff for a purchasing perspective, we focus on qualification, selection, and ongoing evaluation, which are typical of the purchasing department. So let's start from supplier qualification. So, first of all, what is supplier qualification? Remember, step from the potential supply base, so looking at the supply market, all the suppliers that are potentially interested for me, to the actual supply base, so those suppliers that, among the potential interesting one, are those that meet my qualifying criteria. Whenever I talk about supplier qualification, I always like the definition given by Siemens, which is a very famous electronic and international company, that define supplier qualification as it is. So supplier qualification is not an isolated process, is not an isolated activity, is not a tool, but is the initial stage of a broader process, a broader phase, which is supplier management. So supplier qualification is the first step that every supplier at Siemens need to undertake. Not only for new supplier, but existing supplier will be gradually qualified retroactively with regard to applied on our supplier qualification requirements. So supplier qualification is not something that happen only for new supplier. A supplier that I want to include in the actual supply base, but also the existing one that are already supplier in the actual supply base, from a perspective of Siemens, but this is typical of every other company, are subjected of constant re-evaluation in order to be sure that during time qualification requirements, which we'll deep dive in a second, what does it mean, qualification requirements are met. For Siemens, for Siemens, qualification requirements are those reported in this part. So, having fulfilled a number of basic business criteria, company wishing to become a Siemens supplier must meet certain minimum economic, environmental, and social performance standards by completing up to 6 qualification modules. So here there is the essence of the qualification stage. With market research, identify all the potential suppliers that can be suitable for my need. Then I ask my supplier to complete some document, to provide me some information, and I will assess this information according to economic, environmental, and social criteria, objective requirements that each company set. For example, Siemens set economic, environmental, and social performance, and if the supplier meets this standard, can be included in the actual supply base, thus being considered as a potential partner to be selected for a future supply. Otherwise, it cannot be part of the Siemens supply base, or generally speaking, of the company supply base. This is a typical phase of the qualification process. The qualification process usually is a very complete. Not every qualification process has all these 4 steps, but the most complete have it. So first, every company have a information system, have a platform, have a website. So the first step usually was called a registration. So a supplier that want to be a supplier of a company need to go on the portal of the company and register their data. So in order that we collect the name, where we are based, which are our characteristics, some general descriptive and graphics about the supplier. And this is like the first go-no-go. So the supplier needs to be able, especially multinational company, to register himself to the company portal. So if a supplier is not even able to access, create a password, insert the basic information, it will never be considered as a potential partner to be given a future contract. Okay, so the first step is supplier register on the website. Then once the supplier registers on the website, usually it is subjected to what is called pre-qualification and self-evaluation. So a supplier is giving what is called a supplier questionnaire to be filled. Okay, they need to provide, and we will see example in a while, you need to provide some information which can be more or less detailed, and according to this information the supplier can be pre-qualified or not, which means that this is already a first go no go. So the supplier provide information related to the number of employee, the revenue, the type of management, the financial condition, the information included in the company report, everything that you can think the supplier can, the type of product realized, the number of machineries, the number of plants. So every detailed stuff that can characterize the nature of the supplier. According to this information provided, and again through a tool that is called Supplier Questionnaire, and we will see in a minute an example, the company is already able to make an evaluation which is based by internal information provided by the supplier. If the supplier is survive positively this phase, is called it acquired the status of pre-qualified supplier. Then, of course, this pre-qualification is made according to against information provided by the supplier. Of course, the company need to make an evaluation also according to external and objective information about the supplier. In doing that, there are some external organizations like Cribis, DBMB, the American Accounting Association, that realize assessment of company in the market that a buying company can acquire, can see, and see this type of document and see how this type of auditing company assess the supplier. So basically, By filling the supplier questionnaire, the supplier includes the information and the company make the evaluation if the supplier is pre-qualified or not. Through a supplier qualification, through external auditing, the buying company acquire report and sheet and assessment made by external companies like the American Accounting Association, CRIBIS, DMB, and we will see an example also in this case, where basically this company make an assessment of the economics, financial and reputational stability of the supplier. So, by complementing the information collected by the self-evaluation questionnaire and the auditing qualification questionnaire, the supplier acquire finally the status of being qualified or not. So basically, after this step, a company knows that if a supplier is really suitable or not to be selected in the future for a potential supply. While these steps are usually present in all the companies and for all the categories, so you first ask the supplier to register themselves to the website, then to fill a pre-qualification questionnaire, then you usually complement this information provided the supplier with external report provided by other companies which are objective, especially for more potential critical supplier. There are also some cases in which you can refine your qualification by asking a supplier a product qualification, not just a company qualification. It is called the so-called trial order evaluation. So once the supplier is qualified, you can ask the supplier that has already the potential to be selected in the future to be one of your supplier because it has passed through the successfully these 3 steps, in order to make the future process of selection easier, and in order to already know which type of quality, which type of characteristic, which type of product your supplier can offer, you can ask for a trial order. So you ask the supplier to give you a trial of what you will be asked, what you may ask in the future, and by evaluating what your supplier is going to provide, you can qualify or not your product. Of course, for suppliers that have already product qualified, of course, the selection and the contract award process will be easier because you already know which type of quality, which type of condition, which type of characteristic of the product the supplier is going to offer you. So whenever you will select him, you will select it. Of course, the process of establishing supply condition will be easier. Usually, again, this process can be developed in these phases, but usually you can represent this process through a flow chart. Also, here you see an example, just to highlight you this is an example taken from a real case, an example of a pre-qualification process mapping, just to make you aware of the people that are involved in the process. So the technical office in this case raise the need for a new supplier and request the qualification of a new supplier. So this request is sent to the purchasing office, in particular to the buyer. That request formalize the request on a particular form. At this point, for this company, the buyer doesn't manage the scouting of and the interaction with the new supplier, but is the purchasing head in charge of this. So the purchasing head made the telephonic scouting to find this new supplier, analyze and synthesize the information gathered through the supplier questionnaire, and then understand if there is the possibility to proceed and qualifying the supplier or not. If not, the supplier is out and the technical office is notified that the new supplier cannot be qualified. If yes, there is a fourth actor that arises, which is the quality assurance, so the quality department. So the quality assurance receive the information gathered by the purchasing head, coordinate with other function, and decide about the kind of qualification the supplier should have. In particular, if you are just thinking about a supplier qualified So the supplier is suitable to be part of the supply base of the company and order a future supply. It is called a supplier qualification. It instead is a supplier that is recognizable and is strong enough to have a product qualified. Of course, we will ask a trial order and we will evaluate the type of product that it will be able to provide to the company. Let's step with the example. Again, of course, every company then has his type of process. I will just show you some example and we'll analyze some characteristics. So, supplier qualification process. Let's take an example. ABB. ABB is a company that is a multinational company that relies pioneering technology that works in different type of industry. So you'll see aerospace and defense, service industry, pharmaceutical industry. So they are an industrial company. They realize machineries and automatic control system, digital technologies that are included in production system of manufacturing companies. Here is the qualification process of ABB. If you want to see some details about that, you have the complete supplier manual. So that's an internal document. So please manage it with care. But I have uploaded the ABB supplier requirements and qualification process. So basically, in this manual, ABB describe, this is an internal employee document, so again, please be careful in managing that because it's a confidential document. So basically, they represent you the qualification process. I will go in just to discuss in a minute what does it mean. And then for each phase, you see, there is a description of what each phase means for ABB. So it's a manual of 9 pages, you see, and there is the presentation. Imagine you work for a purchasing department of ABB or also for a supplier, okay? For transparent, this is how our qualification process works, and this is how each activity is deployed. So in particular, first, you see that this is the process. First, there is a request for a new supplier. Okay, first, is there a request for a supplier assessment or qualification, which basically means, is the supplier already qualified or not, even if it's a new supplier? If the answer is no, purchasing can proceed for asking a delivery to the supplier. If the supplier assessment instead is required, the first step is the supplier self-assessment. What is supplier self-assessment? The supplier evaluates himself against the ABB supplier requirement document. We will see in a minute what does it mean. Using the supplier assessment questionnaire and submit the results supporting document to the requesting ABB unit. So basically, with the first phase, we are in the supplier self-evaluation. So the supplier evaluates himself according to a supplier questionnaire that we'll analyze in a while. After this, there is a question. Site visit required, so in light of how much the information have been filled by the supplier. Is ABB trusting the supplier, or we need to visit the site to check what has been declared in the supplier questionnaire? In case the site visit is required, okay, this is a decision whether the information provided by the supplier is sufficient or whether further investigation through a site visit is necessary. When we are not sure about what the supplier has filled in the questionnaire, before to qualify him or get to the next stage, we can organize a supplier visit. On-site visit means that ABB people goes to the supplier plant and check the information that have been included in the supplier self-evaluation questionnaire. In case instead we trust him, we can skip this step. At this point, we have all the information to at first go or no go. So, is the supplier suitable to be included in our actual supply base? No, supplier rejected. Yes, there is another note. Yes, the supplier is assessed, but are we able to say if his production process are suitable or not, or are, let's say, at the standard at ABB requirement, yes or no? If no, we are not sure, and the supplier assessment is okay, If we are not sure about its production process, so we know that the characteristic of the organization, its financial stability, its plant, its people are okay, but we really don't know which technology you use, how it is organized, so we may still have doubt about its production process. So in this case, the supplier is qualified, but we need to check the characteristic of this production process. So in this case, we need so this production unit, which is LBU quality which I don't remember what is that, decides whether a supplier process to deliver a specific part system service needs to be assessed. So in case we need to visit the supplier process, we need to evaluate the supplier process, or we ask the supplier further information, or we go visiting and seeing the supplier production process, and in light of this, we understand if the supplier process assessment is okay or not. Now it becomes a little bit more complex because again, we can there can be an act where we say no, the process is not suitable, so the supplier is rejected. So if the process is assessed and it doesn't meet our requirements, the supplier is rejected. But this can be that the process assessment is okay, which like reunite with the flow when the process assessment was not required. In any case, ABB does also the last phase, which is the product control, the product qualification. So ABB require a first delivery assessment. What is that? This part of the process is to verify an initial sample and first delivery runs and in compliance with all requirements. So basically, as ABB require machineries, machineries are made by system, equipment, tool that are brought by the supplier. They always require to the supplier a trial product of equipment, part, system to check if the quality is compliant with what is requested by ABB. If the first delivery assessment is okay, the supplier is qualified and it can be considered suitable to future selection. Otherwise, the supplier is rejected. So the outcome of it is that supplier delivered qualified and included in the actual supply base, and the purchasing can proceed in considering this type of supplier in the actual supply base to ask future type of needs coming from the internal users. This is an example of a process. The process of qualification doesn't give you just usually a supplier qualified or not, but this is a very simplified aspect. But usually the supplier qualification process gives you an outcome which can be in different categories. So we can have not approved suppliers that are not meeting the selection criteria. Then we can have approved suppliers of suppliers that just meet on a sufficient level our requirements. And then we have also from the qualification stage what we are called preferred suppliers. So supplier that, according to the information that we have collected in a supplier qualification phase, they show a great potential. So they are supplier that whenever a need will arise in the potential supply base will be the first to be addressed because they have the potential to be interesting and potentially a good partner to satisfy my need. Of course, the highest is the status of the supplier, the higher will be the investment that you need to make in the relationship with the supplier, because again, not approved are the suppliers that are not so good, approved that the supplier meeting the basic criteria, preferred supplier are the one that instead has already a great potential since the qualification information provided. Here there's another example of Pirelli case. Pirelli is a tire producer. Again, I don't have too much detail about that, but this is an example of the Pirelli case of supplier registration. So supplier that want to apply for being part of the Pirelli supply base, they need first to submit their application through the supplier, the Pirelli supplier portal, which is here, and during their application, in terms of pre-evaluation questionnaire, they need to they need to provide general company data, so which plant, which type of geographical distribution, employee, name of their management, where they are their headquarters, where they are their offices, and whatever. Then they have to provide some financial figures, so their revenues, their costs, their cash in, their cash out, their asset, liabilities, debt, and whatever. Then commercial activities, which type of product they realize, where they sell, how much their revenues are split among the different markets where they operate. Technical and organizational nature of production processes, so which type of plant they have, where they are located, which type of technology they use, which type of production organization they implement in each plant. And then organizational status, so which type of unit, how many employees per unit, the type of seniority that they have at each level, and so on. Remember, all this information are mandatory, so it means that if you miss one of that, this is lead to an automatic exclusion from the Pirelli evaluated. In fact, if one of the mandatory information is missing, the supplier is automatically not approved. And if the supplier is a current active supplier, it is put on hold and disqualified for the moment. So don't think that if you are in the supplier, the Pirelli supply base, you are no more subjected to a supplier qualification. So every 2 years, Pirelli requires to his current supplier, so its active supplier or supplier that are already part of the supply base, to redo this process and resend the information. In case the supplier misses some information or is not able to provide, don't think that Pirelli just don't care about it, even if it's a current one. So it's a supplier with a contract in place, it is put on hold and disqualified for the moment, because again, every supplier needs to meet the basic criteria in this area. In particular, Pirelli is very sensitive about the sustainability of its supply base. I don't want to go too much in detail into this, but whenever a supplier wants to apply to be part of the Pirelli supply base, they need to be aware of the Pirelli sustainable sourcing guidelines. So they need to meet some health, safety, and environmental laws. They have to have some qualification. They have to provide a list of significant environmental investment and the fact that they meet social requirements. And again, you can be the best company in the market, with the best financial status, with the best product, but for Pirelli, again, tire production is a very environmental impacting. So if for Pirelli you don't meet the sustainable criteria that is requested to a supplier for being part of the supply base, you are disqualified. In particular, what they do at the end of the qualification process is filling this type of grid. Okay, so I don't want to deep dive, you can look more in detail about that, but you see green purchasing, environmental management system, supplier environmental activities, and environmental performance indicator. So how much they purchase green stuff, if they have an environmental management system in place, if they take care of environment in their production activities, and if they measure the environmental performance and their environmental impact. So Pirelli has some indicators here that are associated with each supplier that want to be qualified, and you see now I don't remember every letter, but M, it means met. So SA means satisfied. So met, it means that the basic threshold is met. SA means satisfied, like higher than the basic threshold, and NTH means that it means negative. I don't remember what does it mean exactly, but it means that is not met. So Pirelli assess the supplier against this type of aspect. If the supplier has enough met or satisfied, can be stepped toward the next stage. Otherwise, the supplier is not qualified. Okay, just to give you an idea of how this process works. And each company put threshold and basic criteria to be met in different levels. Again, for Pirelli, the main aspect is not like the financial. The financial is only one of the several, but the most important are the sustainability sourcing indicators. So if you don't have this type of certification, this type of environmental product certification, if you don't produce an environmental report, if you don't take care of the carbon footprint and whatever, you are not able to be part of the supply base of Pirelli, because Pirelli, as a focal company in the supply chain, push toward a sustainability strategy. Now, of course, the let's say the quality of the qualification process strictly depend on the qualification questionnaire. So we have seen that here the first stage is asking the supplier to self-assess himself through a qualification questionnaire and then complement this information with the external report. We will first focus the attention here, and then I will show you some example of external report and how to evaluate them. But of course, this is come first, and the quality of a qualification questionnaire, of the qualification process, of course, depends on the self-evaluation questionnaire that the purchasing department and the company has designed in order to assess the characteristic of the supplier and understand which are if he meets the criteria to be part of the supply base of the company. In this case, we analyze two examples: the ABB qualification form and the AZI qualification form, which are two different companies, and we will see some differences and some strengths and weaknesses of these two types. So, two different tools, two different examples of qualification questionnaire, and both of them are available to you. Let's start with the ABB supplier qualification questionnaire. So we have analyzed the process. Let's see. You see that the supplier qualification questionnaire of ABB is made by 1, 2, 3, 4 parts. So here first, the supplier is given the instruction about how to fill the questionnaire. So you need to fill this information sheet, and then once completed, return a copy of the document along with those supporting documents by email or to the local supply chain management person. So first, it's not the most efficient system because you are filling an Excel, which is then sent manually, so not in the system, to ABB. Also, here, if you want some more information, ABB asks you to revise the ABB supplier requirements document link, which is internal to the ABB library. You see there is a link, you can open it. Then they want the supplier to be available, to be aware of the ABB sustainability policies link, and also the supplier code of conduct. So they are telling you, before filling the questionnaire, remember that these are the requirements that you need to respect in any case. So take a look and be aware of what we require to our supply base. Then the first one is called supplier information sheet. So here, basically, ABB asks the supplier to include some general information about the company. So besides some graphics, the business description, if they have some process that impact sustainability and they have to put a yes or no. Here there is also the comment. So indicate if your business includes any of the following processes, okay, because these are considered by ABB processes that impact the sustainability aspect. Then give the name of your management team: general management, operation management, quality manager, sales manager, if they speak which one of these language, then which is the name of the top 5 shareholders, the number of shifts on which you work, the hours worked, the type of union. Here they tell you information about what you have to put, how many employees you have seen increasing or decreasing or evolving during the year, if you have subsidiaries and joint venture with the name, with the equity owned, the revenue, the business, which are the existing sale and condition with ABB, which of course this supplier is already a supplier of ABB. And here there are some information about the financial figure, revenues 4 years ago and projected one, forecast. In the electrical sector, if they are made with ABB, which is the percentage with ABB, the total labor in terms of direct labor and indirect cost, the export, the material and subcontracting. So, as you can see, a lot of financial figure. And then, which are your main supplier and which are the main item they supply, which are their main customer and the revenues made with their customer in the electrical sector and in the other sector. Which is the strategy summary for target market, target product, target technology, R&D development, if they deliver product or service to ABB globally, how much, the percentage and whatever, and which type of additional information. So as you can see, like a lot of information that are also very sensitive. Okay, so it's a very in-depth. Just this one can be considered a supplier questionnaire by itself. Okay, so just this one can be considered a supplier questionnaire by itself. So, and you can see that some of the information are not like the less easiest to be obtained or to be declared by a supplier, because some of them are also not so much sensitive, not so much shareable. Then this is only the supplier information sheet, because then it is the actual supplier questionnaire. Okay, so for each section, company management. Do you have a business plan for your company or group of companies? Yes, partial, no. And you have to provide, if you want, comment or supporting documents. Again, remember that these help you to be qualified. Okay, so I know that providing the business plan of your company is not the best thing to do, but if you don't provide it, maybe it can affect the evaluation that ABB makes of your company. Is your quality management system certified by an accredited certification body according to ISO 9001? You need to provide the assessment. Then sustainability. During the last 5 years, your company has not been involved in any legal case recording corruption or bribery. Yes, partial, no. So as you can see here, there are a lot of questions about product process design, operational excellence. Do you ensure your sub-supplier continuously improve their quality delivery and sustainability performance? You have to answer and then provide comment to support your answer. Again, these questions are also very personal. Continuous improvement, level of cost. And look at that, like according to your answer, and this is very transparent to the supplier. ABB will give you a score, which can be increased or decreased by the supplementary document that you provide. Okay, so according to this, there is a review made by a supply chain person, a quality person, or a site visit or a site visit team. So according to the further document that you provide and the site visit for assessing the plant, the process of the product, your score can be increased or decreased. So pay attention. I know that this type of information are very detailed and not everyone is able to provide this type of information, but again, the less you provide, the higher is the probability that ABB won't qualify you or will consider your feeling poor. Here instead are the sheet that will be completed by the supplier in case will be asked a supplier assessment visit or in terms of process, plant of product. So supplier location, which type of location, which is the contact, and you see before visiting the supplier should answer this type of question in order then for ABB to check and review and give a result after the visit on the supplier site. Here they are there is the detail about if the supplier needs to indicate if the location of the supplier is within one of these countries, because for these countries there are additional sustainability questions. So in case you are from Uzbekistan, ABB has, you see these are the code, has some supplemental question that the supplier need to fill. Once the supplier has filled this type of questionnaire and went through the process that we have analyzed, here ABB will make an assessment of the supplier on this area and will, you see, you will assess the status of the supplier. If the overall score is below 50%, the supplier is rejected. If it is between 50% and 80%, the supplier will be under development. If it is between 80% and 100%, the supplier will be accepted with a very high score. And of course, this is shared with the supplier. Okay, and the supplier is given a feedback also in terms of areas that need to be improved, which type of plan that we need to put in place to improve it, and some action that need to follow in order to achieve this improvement. Let's have a look at instead the other example. So EasyEye has still a good vendor qualification form, but you see it is one just sheet in Excel, different section, general information about the business. So first EasyEye, I didn't show you that, but EasyEye, if you look at that, it's a company that support construction plant. So provide infrastructure for infrastructure and machinery for construction plant. So if someone you know Bechtel, EasyEye can be a supplier of Bechtel when Bechtel is building plants, and for example the cracker plant that is in Arequipa, EasyEye is one of the Bechtel supplier that provide tools to support site operations. This is the vendor qualification form that EasyEye ask its supplier to submit. Again, there is a business section, okay, where again there is always also some like private information like ABB, like list the corporate office, partner or appropriate firm, and the percentage of ownership, which is, being the construction sector, particularly sensitive to these, which are the safety qualification and the safety regulation that they have in place in order to assure safety of their operator, as they will provide big project, which is the last 3 project that they have managed and in the last 3 years, and which is the maximum and the value contracted and the annual company value for which they have completed this type of project, where this project were located, which type of jurisdiction that the company is legally qualified to work with, because construction companies as EasyEye work around the world, so they need supplier be able to support operation around the world, which type of insurance they have, so because it's important working in construction plant to have insurance and insurance coverage. Again, if the supplier is not coverage by a good insurance, it can be excluded because it's not suitable to be part of EasyEye potential supply base. And then of course you need to provide some reference, because EasyEye wants to know other customer of this company in order to understand if its ability to work in project of long duration. And also they want reference of major supplier, so supplier of the supplier of EasyEye, potential supplier of EasyEye, and bank reference to check its financial status. Then here, the scope of work section. So basically the supplier is applying for be a supplier for something. Here you are asking the supplier to qualify for which type of work to be performed: waterproofing and sealant, parking control equipment, manufacturer casework. So basically the more I select, the more EasyEye will evaluate my suitability to be supplier of this type of work. And of course, again, the more I select, the more strict and focus will be their evaluation. Again, then you have to sign and submit this document to EasyEye Constructor Estimating Department and email estimating@easygroup.com. So just as a quick summary, which are the difference, the strength and the weaknesses. So as you can see, supplier qualification questionnaire of ABB is very structured, very in-depth, because the supplier qualification process of ABB is very structured, is very in-depth. And again, if you click the link, you click on policy, and again, this supplier general self-assessment is beyond the general information required to a supplier. And again, what if you don't want to provide this information? This will prevent you to be qualified. But again, this is a risk that ABB is taking. The supplier can just surrender the supplier qualification questionnaire because it doesn't want to provide this type of information. ABB prefer to have supplier trustable and open and transparent in providing this information than supplier that instead to face the risk that supplier will surrender the process because not willing to provide this type of data. Then you have the qualitative part with answer and supporting document, the further supplier visit and focus on sustainability in case a visit is required, and then the overall assessment and positioning of the supplier according to a global score. Again, if 4 out of 6 areas after last step are higher than 60%, you need to meet a higher fitness, but 4 out of these 6 areas need to be higher than 60%. I forgot to mention that there is a further condition. The global score higher than 50%, but you have 6 areas, 4 areas need to be higher than 60%. So these two conditions. The overall score is not visible to the supplier, but the areas and the action for improvement are shared with them in order to improve in the future. EasyEye, instead, they have a supplier question which is less in step, but is still well designed. So they have a business section, a safety section, a project information section, scope of work, where they see that. And in particular, after this, the supplier status assigned can be gold star, so the best in class, gold, silver, bronze, and copper. And after copper, it means that you are not qualified. So the best in class are these one, which will be the preferred one once there will the need to supply something in the scope of work section that the supplier falls within. Silver and bronze instead, and copper are the suppliers that instead are low position. Generally speaking, a supplier qualification questionnaire can be considered reliable, strong, and complete if it includes some of the aspects that you see listed here. So it should be general company information, the legal compliance, financial solidity, technical competence, production capacity, service and delivery capabilities, quality standard, innovation capabilities, reference and previous experience, insurance, health and safety and environment, and corporate social responsibility. So basically, your supplier qualification questionnaire need to ask the supplier to provide information in as much area as possible, because again, you need to be able to understand to this type of quantitative and qualitative data provided how much is the suitability of the supplier to satisfy your future needs.